So if there's one thing in this world I like more than forcing obscene quantities of high quality alcohol into my body until I black out and wake up the next day in someone's outdoor swimming pool, it's a good bit of science fiction. And what could be more quintessentially sci-fi than Star Trek? A show that dared to present a bright, bold, optimistic vision of the future, where humanity's put aside the petty bullshit of the present day and turned our attention to exploring the stars. Star Trek was actually a big part of my childhood, more so even than Star Wars. I grew up watching reruns of the classic original series, and I've got happy memories of watching movies like Wrath of Khan and Undiscovered Country with my dad, following the exciting, moving, and occasionally thought-provoking adventures of Captain Kirk and the Starship Enterprise. But time and Paramount's production schedule wait for no man, and soon it was time for a new generation to take the helm, boldly going where no one has gone before. Star Trek The Next Generation was, in many ways, the ultimate evolution of Gene Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek. It was a world where old enemies like the Klingons were now part of the Federation, where starships were more comfortable, accessible, and family-friendly, and where the rough and ready heroics of Captain Kirk had been replaced by the more thoughtful, cultured diplomacy of Jean-Luc Picard. The show ran for 7 seasons before transitioning into feature films that were, well, a bit shit. The Next Generation's adventures finally sputtered to a halt with the underwhelming Star Trek Nemesis back in 2002, and with Paramount becoming increasingly preoccupied with shitting out Star Trek prequels from every orifice, it seemed like we'd seen the last of Picard and crew. But never underestimate the the creativity of a studio lumbered with a failing franchise and a practically unworkable licensing situation, in dire need of anything, to draw back the increasingly apathetic fan base. With the Star Trek movies effectively J.J. Abrams'd into the ground, and Star Trek Discovery failing to connect with the dozen or so people who bothered to watch it, we got the announcement that Patrick Stewart was returning to his most iconic role for the first time in nearly 20 years. But would it work? Could a man in his late 70s still play a central role in a franchise that seemed increasingly geared towards younger audiences? Would Roddenberry's utopian vision of humanity still hold up in today's cynical climate, where everyone makes it their business to be angry and offended by everything? Would anyone even care after so long? Well, set phasers to fucked, because we're going in at warp speed with this one. Join me as I review the first episode of Star Trek Picard. So the episode kicks off aboard the Enterprise D, where a really old looking Picard is playing poker with a really fake looking Data in 10 forward, and I couldn't help but notice that everything looks kind of weird and different from how I remember it. About 25% different if I had to guess. But then everything goes to shit and the window explodes and everyone dies. Holy shit, Picard doesn't fuck around, man. But then the script is like, nah, it'll be fine. It was all just a dream, you see. Picard wakes up in his vineyard in France and has a good moan about how he resents having to get up each day. Fuck off, Jean-Luc. You live in a beautiful mansion in a beautiful country with access to as much free wine as you can drink. Try waking up in my hometown with nothing but a hangover and a half-eaten pot noodle to start your day. Then you'll know misery, my son. Anyway, we learn that Picard resigned from Starfleet decades ago under mysterious circumstances, and now he holds a grudge against them. And for some reason, he's got a couple of Romulans working for him as housekeepers, because I guess someone's got to check the space toilet for Klingons. But drinker, you strikingly articulate patron of the arts, I hear you say. The Romulans were the bad guys in The Next Generation, and they look down on humans as kind of weak and pathetic. Why would Romulans now be working as servants for Picard on his vineyard? Well, stay tuned, dear viewer. Your questions will be answered. So Picard is even more grumpy than usual because he has to do a TV interview about his career. Wait, isn't TV supposed to be obsolete in the 24th century?
I believe he means television, sir. That particular form of entertainment did not last much beyond the year 2040.
Nah, maybe it's made a comeback or something. Anyway, he gets interviewed and we find out that he led an unsanctioned rescue mission to evacuate the Romulan homeworld when their sun exploded. Oh god, no, it's recognizing the Kelvin timeline! But while all these shenanigans were going on, Mars suddenly came under attack by synthetics. What's a synthetic, you might ask?
An android.
Yeah, androids are called synthetics now for some reason. I don't fucking know. Anyway, the synthetics destroyed the entire planet and the shipyards needed to make new starships. This caused the Federation to abandon the rescue effort, which prompted Picard to resign in protest. So the end result of all this crap is that there's three major plot elements underlying the storyline of Picard. 1. The Romulans have become the refugees of the galaxy. 2. Synthetics have been outlawed and all research into them has been forbidden. 3. The Federation has become defensive and isolationist and resentful of the Romulan refugees on their doorstep. Wow, that's a whole bunch of different shit going on right there. But keep it in mind, because for me it betrays one of the big problems with this show. Star Trek Picard tries to cram a lot of backstory, major events and conflicting plot elements into like the first 15 minutes of the first episode, and it just feels like too much. It's like they had a half dozen different ideas for how to kick things off, and they just decided to run with all of them and hope for the best. Anyway, flash over to Boston, where a diverse female character is getting wasted with her diverse male boyfriend. But before they can have some awkward and unsatisfying space sex, a bunch of assholes teleport in and kill diverse male boyfriend, and they try to arrest diverse female character by putting a sleepy time bag on her head. But then she flips out and kills them all with her bare hands. Then she has some weird vision of Picard, so she tracks him down to his vineyard. Because we're short on screen time, so I guess she can just do that kind of thing without any issues. And Picard is like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "I don't know." So he's like, "You should stay." What the fuck? If someone showed up unannounced at my house because they said they had a dream about me, I would not be inviting them to stay the night. Well, unless they were hot, I guess. Wait a minute. I see what you're up to, Jean-Luc. Set phasers to stunning and...
Engage.
Anyway, before Picard can access her warp core, she runs away to Paris and phones her mum, but then she gets suspicious and hangs up, and that's the scene over. What the fuck? Meanwhile, Picard has a dream about Data painting a really shit picture, so he goes all the way to Starfleet Archives in San Francisco, because I guess we have to cram in as many iconic Star Trek locations as possible. But then diverse female character shows up with no explanation. Wow, that was lucky. It's great how these characters can just run into each other whenever the plot needs them to.
Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
So they have a chat and Picard tells her she's related to Data, but then another bunch of assholes beam in and start shooting at them. And I guess all the Starfleet security personnel were on holiday that day. I mean, it's not like this is an important Federation facility or anything. So diverse female character beats the crap out of the assholes. But oh no, one of them spits acid on her and she blows up. And the blast knocks Picard unconscious. But it's okay because he wakes up back at his vineyard. What the fuck is going on here? Shouldn't he be in a hospital or something? I mean, getting thrown across the rooftop when you're 80 years old isn't the kind of thing you can just walk off. But the script is like, nah, it'll be fine. So Picard goes to Okinawa for some reason and meets with Brilliant Female Scientist. Brilliant Female Scientist explains that diverse female character was a human clone made from a piece of Data's positronic brain. And luckily enough, the cloning process creates twins, so there's another diverse female character out there, and she just happens to be working with the Romulans to salvage a derelict Borg cube.
No way!
And that's it, that's the plot for Star Trek Picard. So what the hell do I think about this show? Well, it seems like kind of a mixed bag, crammed with too many ideas and no sense of how to implement them properly. On the positive side, it's nice to see Patrick Stewart back in the saddle again. Even if he looks like he drank from the wrong cup in The Last Crusade, he's still got more charisma, charm and screen presence in his fucking hair than the entire cast of Star Trek Discovery combined.
Why are you doing this?
Fuck off, Michael Burnham, you you walking retcon. There's a lot of affectionate nods back to the Next Generation with the use of the Romulans, the Enterprise, Data, and the Borg, but it all feels kind of diluted and altered somehow. Even Data looks weird, with his obviously fake wig and face that's so deep in the uncanny valley, he's gonna need an axe and a pair of crampons to get out. It's also worth pointing out that Brent Spiner wanted Data to die in Nemesis because he felt he was getting too old to realistically play an android that doesn't age, and that was 20 years ago. The point is, none of this nostalgic stuff looks like it did in the original show, and while I understand that TV has moved on since the days of TNG, I can't help but feel that it's actually down to the fucked up legal situation at Paramount, which basically resulted in monstrosities like this. That is real. That is what Klingons look like according to Star Trek Discovery. And every little reference gets trodden on by an unnecessary exposition dump because obviously the show's trying to walk the tightrope of pleasing hardcore Star Trek fans while trying not to alienate casual viewers at the same time. And as we learned from Rise of Skywalker, when you try to please everyone, you end up satisfying no one. More fundamentally though, there's a lot of things about this show that don't sit well with me. First and foremost, the setup. See, Picard is set in a world where the Federation has grown kind of isolated and hostile towards outsiders, and it treats Romulan refugees like unwanted trash that it would rather not have to deal with. Is that a reference to something? Is that a reference to something? Is that a reference to something? Enough! Jesus, we already had the Klingons doubling up for Trump supporters in Discovery. Now the entire Federation is apparently a stand-in for the Orange Man. Why? What is this weird obsession with trying to awkwardly cram in 2020 politics into a show set hundreds of years in the future? But drink her, you indefatigable virtuoso, I hear you say. Star Trek has always tackled the political and social concerns of the time. It's intended to be a mirror on our fears and hopes and aspirations, and criticising it for reflecting present day issues is like criticising Amy Schumer for being disgusting and unfunny. Well, suspiciously pragmatic strawman, the difference here is that the Star Trek of the past used to present its allegories from a fair and neutral position, allowing the audience to weigh up both sides of an argument and draw their own conclusions. Now it just feels like an excuse to club us over the head with some preachy, self-righteous moralising from Picard, as if everyone else has lost their minds and he's the last sane man left. And I can't help but feel that what we're seeing here is less the character and more the views of the man playing him. It also kind of feels like this shit's been done before. A massive disaster that forces a former enemy to the negotiating table, leaving the Federation unsure of how to deal with them, accompanied by a conspiracy to reignite conflict on both sides? Where have I seen this storyline before?
They are dying. Let them die.
Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country incorporated the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War in the real world into its storyline, but it did it in a way that felt smart, realistic, and appropriate. It exposed an aging Kirk's inability to let go of past grievances and question how he might fit into a new world that no longer needs men like him. But now it seems like the opposite situation. Everyone else is stuck in wrongthink, and only one idealistic old man can save the day. It feels contrived and wrong, bending common sense to fit an agenda. Also, the idea that the Federation could become isolationist and xenophobic is kind of ludicrous when you consider it's made up of dozens of different species from hundreds of different planets. How exactly can such a diverse organisation be isolationist? That would be like the United Nations becoming hostile to foreign countries. Also, how exactly are the entire Romulan species now refugees just because their home planet got blown up? Like, didn't they have an empire spanning literally dozens of worlds in the Next Generation? What happened to all of them? Did they all blow up too? And why are some of them now working as housekeepers for Picard? Is that a reference to something? And what's all this bullshit about Mars getting blown up in the middle of a refugee crisis? A terrorist attack that cripples the heart of the Federation? Is that a reference to something? All of this stuff feels exactly like what it is. A forced and contrived restructuring of the Star Trek universe to make it conform with our present day political landscape. And it all just seems kind of depressing. The point of Star Trek was to give us something to aspire to. It showed us that despite our mistakes and failings, there was something inherently good and noble in the human race, and that one day we'd move past these weaknesses to become something better. We'd set our sights on loftier goals.
Not mapping stars and studying nebula, but charting the unknown possibilities of existence.
Now it's just like, nah, it won't be fine. Humans are just generally shit, and no matter how high we climb, we'll always be pulled back down by our own failings. Great, thanks Picard, you dick. The end result of all this crap is a confused mishmash of different ideas and concepts, all competing for time and attention in a show that doesn't seem to have enough of either. From what I understand, the original episode count had to be trimmed down when Amazon bought the show over. Working against the clock, they did this by splicing storylines and episodes together in the editing bay, and it shows. Relationships that should have been given time to grow and develop naturally feel rushed and forced in order to get to the resolution as quickly as possible. Deaths that should be shocking and tragic land with all the impact of a roundhouse kick from Captain Pike. World-changing events are glossed over and shoved together so that you're never quite sure what's supposed to be important or even relevant. And it's all made worse by a scattershot narrative that jumps to as many different locations as possible with no rhyme or reason. Heavy-handed political lectures delivered with all the subtlety of an Adam Sandler movie, and fast-paced Matrix-style fight scenes that look and feel totally at odds with everything Star Trek is supposed to be. And the frustrating part is that I think there's some fundamentally good ideas lurking at the heart of this show. The problem is that they're buried under so much shit that instead of drawing you in with a compelling story, you sort of have to suffer through it. I honestly can't tell if these are just some initial wobbles in what will ultimately become a competent and well-made show, or fundamental problems that'll sink Picard before it manages to get going. What I will say though, is that it at least makes me want to tune in next week to see what happens. Unlike Discovery, which made me want to drink bleach until I erased the very existence of the show from my mind. I'm still working on that one. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.